Our next speaker in this session is Charlton Clark, who's General Manager of Antarctic Operations and Safety at AAD, where he's responsible for getting people and freight to and from Antarctica, keeping our expeditioners safe, resupplying the stations, but most importantly, ensuring the program delivers the science. And I thought I might actually share an anecdote of my first experience in the Australian Antarctic program at Casey Station earlier this year. It was a really wonderful time to be down there and immersed in the science, but what became critically clear to me during that stay was that it doesn't matter how perfect our science program is designed if Charlton can't deliver it. So no pressure, Charlton, but we really hope that you're going to be able to deliver the incredible science that we've heard about today. Charlton's worked in a diverse range of roles over the last 20 years, focused on national, international, marine and Antarctic issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole, and good afternoon, everyone. It's been a real pleasure as a simple logistician who studied political theory of all things to listen in today and be inspired by the presenters. And I suppose we don't do operations in Antarctica for its own sake, it's with purpose. And today, I think, if ever, there's an opportunity to see that purpose of why we do what we do to support our science community. It was a great example of that. So we have the task of developing and delivering support for our scientific efforts in Antarctica. We train, we clothe, equip, we transport people to Antarctica. We get them to where they need to go, by ship, by air, by vehicle, over snow, across the water occasionally. And importantly, we co-design that program with the scientists to ensure that we're delivering what they need to deliver. That's a real challenge because Antarctica is a unique environment, and today I think we've had a series of presenters, and I hate to say there's actually been a real fraud committed. This is coming from a political scientist, academic fraud. Of course, that fraud, you might pause and reflect, is every image that's been shown today is a beautiful day. The weather's been perfect, the sky's blue. There might have been a couple of presentations that had maybe a streak of cloud in it, but there definitely wasn't the impression of minus 25 and 55 knots of wind, or a ship getting stuck in ice, or a blizzard coming, or a rolling low pressure system that continues every 3 days continually. So much of the work we do is disrupted, and the disruption is in a high consequence environment. So we plan for things as best we can, but we have capabilities to respond as things change. And we're fortunate we've got a remarkable group of people, both station leaders, voyage leaders, field leaders, that can support our teams as best they can. And when something goes wrong, we've got the medical support and incident support to keep the program on the go. So ordinarily, our job is to take people to Antarctica. We can't do that today. It'd be lovely to get a plane out here at Canberra Airport, fly down. The team at Wilkins Aerodrome are about to commission up the runway. So much of the footage today is really some of what we do. I'll talk through that to say this is how we do things at the moment, but then importantly touch on the future and some really exciting capabilities that are coming down the line that go to the heart of how we're going to support science for not just the next 2-3 years, but for the decade to come. So that's the aim of the next 15 minutes. So the program's growing in scale, and last year we saw 3 ships in operation. We'll do that again this year. So the amazing RSV Noina sadly is going to be joining the program later than we hoped this season, but a cargo ship and another icebreaker. And it just gives a sense of the scale of the program when we're now transporting thousands of tonnes to Antarctica to rebuild stations over time, to support our science, and importantly, over the last 12 months in particular, transport huge amounts of cargo for the million-year ice core trip that I'll cover on in just a few moments. Much of our work is about transporting energy to and from Antarctica, millions of litres of fuel, and it's one of the great challenges we face over the coming decade of how do we decouple our operations from that fuel source. It presents environmental risk, but it also is just a really inefficient way of operating in Antarctica because we create a pyramid to get someone to do that science and, you know, the fantastic work that's going to be happening with the Millionaire Ice Core, the logistic pyramid to make that happen is hundreds of thousands of litres of fuel to make that happen. So one of our big challenges. As I said, the team is just starting to fire up Wilkins runway this season, and typically each season we operate about 20 flights to and from the continent, transporting people in an Airbus or heavy cargo in a C-17 aircraft, and both those capabilities have been a game changer. The next step change, which couples with future capabilities, is our capacity now to airdrop things into Antarctica. So projects that are on the cards in the coming seasons, to take just one example, the Denman terrestrial program in the Bunga Hills, we've now got multiple ways of delivering the cargo, the equipment, scientific equipment, especially that stuff that won't break, to the field to get it in place where it needs to be. And that's complemented by smaller aircraft, both our helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, to move people around the continent. But we've only got a very small window to get this done. Typically, for those who are familiar, you'll know that really the summer period starts in November, and at best we're through to the end of February or early March. We've got to compress as much as we can and extract every bit of value out of the program during that short period. So for big challenges like the Traverse, which our ops team will deliver the drilling team 1,200 kilometres inland up to an elevation of 3 kilometres, they've got very narrow windows to get that work done. So we train and prepare the best we can back here in Hobart. We've got some really good teams down in Antarctica at the moment getting ready. They've done some trial work, and you know, this is science on a grand scale. The capacity to move and create an inland station is a capability we haven't had for decades, and it's fantastic to see that come back into place. We operate our stations. They're getting old. There's an exciting program to modernise those over the coming years. And that leads to why some of our strategy now is not just to get ready for the rebuilding of those programs, but how do we maintain the scientific effort during that period? And that's what I really want to touch on in the second half of this presentation. So, over time, amazing capabilities to upgrade our stations. That legacy of the 80s and 90s, they're at their time where they need rebuilding. There'll be a different type of station going into the future, rather than being a destination in themselves, far more a transit point to get scientists to where they need to be or where they want to be. Johnny Stark touched earlier today on the 36 ice-free areas in East Antarctica. 33 of them are not near the Antarctic stations that we operate from at the moment, or our reach and access to them is only limited. So we are re-looking at how we run our logistics and operations to not just keep those stations operating, to rebuild them over time, but decouple as much as we can during that period our support for science to ensure that we can maintain, or not just maintain, but increase the scientific effort over the next 2, 5 and 10 years to get scientists where they need to be. Part of that strategy includes looking at a range of new capabilities, and if the motion catches up, I'll get to those capabilities in a moment. You'll see that at the moment, this is current state of moving people not just by air, but between our stations by fixed-wing aircraft. We've only really got limited capacity to do that. The Basler aircraft we use, we've seen heaps of footage today. They're approaching their 80th birthday. It's time to look for new capabilities. Part of that is this year we'll be introducing new twin-engine helicopters, and in recent government announcements, we've now got the capability to bring online medium-lift helicopters. And the concept that is demonstrated here is those medium-lift helicopters deployed from Naina, or in the future other cargo ships or ships that are able to support aircraft operations, give us the capacity throughout East Antarctica to deploy new summer field stations. And those are scalable stations, but up to 40 people in the field. And what we're trying to do is invert the pyramid. At the moment, that pyramid of support staff to scientists is a very broad base, with only a very small number of scientists at the point of that pyramid. The model we're looking at for those summer field and air deployable stations is really something around 40 people in total, but about 15 support staff and 25 scientists. So it really changes the model. It's still early days, but the work we're doing at the moment of setting up the Denman terrestrial program is really a pilot study for that. And similarly, the Traverse work hopefully will lead to, in the future, the capability for further future inland stations. And of course, science will dictate where they are. Our job is to try and make it happen. So, these capabilities that are coming down the line. I've talked about the new medium lift helicopters. So to paint a picture, the squirrels, or B3 squirrels we use, typically over extended ranges, move about 750 kilos of equipment or people at any one time. We're looking at airframes that will have the capability to move about 2.5 tonnes, and the government funding is for 4 of those. So that's a real game changer. We're more than likely still going to require the odd squirrel or two for the local area taxi around the Westerfold Hills or for other work that requires that sort of capability. With fixed-wing aircraft, our other contracts come up over the next 12 to 18 months, and we're looking at what are the future platforms that are going to support our science into the future. You know, what is the science requirement for arrays, whether they're towed or fixed to platforms, right through to where do we want to go and what do we need to do. So in the next 12 months, we'll be defining that and going back out to the market. Similarly, we've got this amazing capability at Wilkins Aerodrome. We can operate aircraft up to the size of C-17 there. There's a question now of what's the next capability that we might use into the future for passenger movement as well. On the shipping front, we've touched a fair bit on Noina. The team's busy at the moment getting Noina ready. You would be aware that unfortunately it's got some technical issues that have seen it delayed in Singapore. These are manufacturing issues that are currently being rectified. But this season we'll see other ships being used. 2 of them have been in the images we saw earlier. But into the future, what we're trying to do is decouple our logistics, so the resupply of our stations, both dry cargo and fuel, to maximise the time available for Noina to do science. So whether that's marine science in the Southern Ocean or to skirt the entirety of East Antarctica to deploy scientists to the field and use the ship as a floating platform. We're optimistic that we can find some other vessels within the budget that we've been given that'll be really, again, decouple us logistically, but also not put all our eggs in one basket. We're going through a massive program of upgrading our communications, and this is not just to look after our people and keep them safe, but also to provide that connectivity for people in the field, our scientists, our support staff, so we can look after them in a contemporary way. Some of our communication systems, although they're good, the modern expeditioner gets a bit frustrated with buffering Netflix or when WhatsApp doesn't work. So again, we still don't know some of the benefits that will come from that upgrade to the communication systems that might provide capabilities for science. Lastly, just touching again on the summer field stations and that decoupling of our science support from being in fixed locations to an extent. The idea of being able to make those deployable by helicopters or by Traverse really provides an opportunity to the scientific community to set the agenda of where do you want to go. We're really trying to remove that constraint of having everything deployed through stations. So Nicole and the team with the decadal plan, with the with the T&I technology looking at remote systems, there's a whole opportunity coming together now to redefine where we want to go and what we want to do throughout the entirety of the East Antarctica. One aspect, and it's the major program for this season, the Traverse. I just don't want to gloss over the challenge that's ahead of us. And this is not a marker to say it's a bit of an insurance policy if something goes wrong, but it's a remarkable undertaking. At Dome C at the moment, Taz, I think we're talking minus 55, minus 56. It's at 3 kilometres of altitude, 1,200 kilometres over an unproven route. And we've used the best satellite data. We've used the best scientists to advise on how to get there and how to operate, but it's a monumental challenge. So this year, pilot year, hopefully we'll get everything up there. Sorry, not hopefully, we will get everything up there. We just need the weather to do its part. We've got some fantastic people, some great field leaders and scientists underway, but it's just, it rolls off the tongue. It's only 1,200 kilometres at 11 kilometres an hour for 3 weeks at minus 35, but I'm sure they're going to do a fantastic job. When they get there, and this fits in with this future operating model that provides greater capability, it's a diagrammatic of what is a traverse-supported field camp is. So we're not talking just polar pyramids and dome tents to support science. There's actually quite a robust capability to support the acquisition of data, keeping people safe, and even small field laboratories that allow some analysis on site. Again, the ratio of support to science, I think, is a really good balance. And again, over the next year or two, working with TNI, working with the science community, I think that's a real game changer. The ones that will be deployed by Traverse are a bit heavier. They're slower, obviously, but we're trying to come up with a scalable option that we can reach out to the scientific community and then work as the scientific programs and projects are being designed to come up with options that work best for everyone. As I said, pilot program this season in the Denman Glacier. That is with proven technology. We're looking to use some newer and more renewable energy sources in those camps. But again, I think they're going to be getting back to some of that big multidisciplinary science in the areas we want to get to. All the ops team are ready to provide that capability. A final shot, just one of the new helicopters that got brought out of the box the other day. These are a small change in the direction we're heading. They provide only a little increase on what the current airframes do, but they do provide an opportunity to do science and search and rescue in a slightly different way. So it's a step, another activity happening this year, I think, in the right direction. Thank you.